Hello, BookTube. It occurs to me that I lapsed on the reading rush at the end there. I was the event that used to be BookTubeathon had 2 more days left in it. I just sort of got distracted by something shiny and didn't do those last 2 days. So the reading rush is now long over, but I want to do those last 2 days and at least finish it up because the prompts are really good for both days. The penultimate day was to read a book that has 5 or more words in the title, and that gives me a perfect chance to strongly recommend a book with more than 5 words in the title to you, which I've been using this anyway. I've been using this as a means to recommend things. 2019, as a lot of you know, was an anniversary. It's been an anniversary year for many, many things, and one of those things was the Apollo mission that landed men on the moon. We've been a slew of books, science manuals, children's books, picture books, narrative histories, all that sort of stuff, and keyhole histories of, for instance, the individual Soviets. There have been novels, all sorts of stuff like that, all different aspects of the whole world's space programs in the lead up to Apollo 11. And the book that I want to recommend today is one of the most remarkable in that glut of books. One of the only, I got probably 50 books on the moon landing in the course of 2019. Of course, 2019 isn't over yet, but they tended to peak with the actual month of the anniversary. So I don't know how many more there'll be in 2019, but I got a slew of books, and there's only a tiny handful, fingers of one hand, that I'm actually saving. And this is one of them. This is by Don Lego, and it's called The Shadows Moving in the Moon's Skull Eyes. And this is a vision of the Apollo mission from the viewpoint of the moon. And you wouldn't think that could be carried off, and it really, really is. This is the story of a dead rock in space, one of the coldest places anywhere that we know of, that is visited by a very strange thing. A very strange thing happens to it a handful of times in its history. And this is a narration sort of quasi-poetically from that point of view. And I just loved it. I thought it was fantastic. A tiny little thing. And I don't know, this is University of West Alabama, so I'm not sure what kind of distribution this got. It might never have gone to your bookstore. But you should, if you're interested in the subject and you want, the best books on this subject from 2019, this is one of them. So we saw Armstrong, we saw the translation of a kid's book about a mouse that goes to the moon before humans. We saw American Moonshot by Douglas Brinkley, a big narrative history, and there have been a few other things. This belongs on that same shelf. This is a brilliant, brilliant work. One of the first things that the moon notices about these weird things, these weird intruders into its world, is that they aren't asteroids, because the moon is pockmarked with asteroid impact craters. And naturally, when it sees something streaking through the sky, it assumes this is another asteroid. And there's actually a really good bit. This is the only thing I'll read from your book, because they're long, incantatory paragraphs, and I want you to experience that for yourself. It is tremendously good. The whole universe is like the moon, chaotic and lifeless and mindless. This is a universe of craters, of planets and moons saturated with craters, craters within craters, craters atop craters, craters ruining other craters. This is a universe of rubble thrown out of craters, of boulders and fragments and vast plains of dust. This is a universe of rocks attacking one another, of asteroids and comets colliding with one another and with planets and moons. This is a universe of gas, of huge clouds of gas and planets of gas. This is a universe of ice. This is a universe of too much cold and too much heat, too much darkness and too much radiation, too much overcrowded matter and far too much emptiness. This is not a universe of life. Not much of it, only isolated specks of it. Not a universe where life should regard itself as normal or inevitable or safe. The universe is enormously talented at blocking and extinguishing life. Throughout the universe, intelligent species have watched helplessly as a rogue star wandered toward them, turning tides into tsunamis, cracking tectonic plates, and setting volcanoes flowing, ruining ancient cities. Civilizations have watched nearby stars going supernova, watched nearby black holes growing larger and more energetic. Worlds full of life have been engulfed and burned to dust, and their planets have entirely disappeared. Worlds long full of life have been severely disrupted by asteroid impacts, by mobs of volcanoes filling the atmosphere with poisons, by climates deteriorating. So why is it that in an ungenerous universe of craters where Earth has been set free from the curse of craters, why is it that I am surrounded by millions of craters? And lo and behold, to the moon's astonishment, this is not an asteroid. It changes course. It alters course. It slows. And it lands. And the book is just goes on from there. It is a perfect counterpoint to all the other moon landing and moon mission books that have appeared in 2019. So for the penultimate prompt for the Reading Rush, this has more than 5 words in the title, and I also wanted to strongly recommend it to you. The University of West Alabama is not going to have wide distribution. If this sounds of interest to you, go to their website and order it from them. Absolutely. Because I don't think you're going to see it otherwise. That was the penultimate prompt. And then the last prompt for the Reading Rush, I think, was to read a book-movie adaptation. Do a book-movie adaptation. Read a book or reread a book and then watch a movie version. And I love to do that anyway. I've often thought about doing a whole series of book-movie adaptations on this channel, just one a week for the rest of time. And I have a fairly unorthodox opinion on the subject. Usually when you talk to book people, they'll say the book is always better. There are t-shirts, there are tote bags that have that line on it, the book is always better. I've almost never known that to be true. It's almost always been my experience that the movie is better than the book. And that was certainly true this time around, because I pulled off my shelf the novel Logan's Run, and I reread it. And it was god-awful. It's just awful. It doesn't make any sense. The plot is all jumbled. The characters are terrible. They speak in jingo. The world is very, very poorly thought out. Some of you will know it's a dystopian world in which people are not allowed to get old. They have jewels on their palms that change color as their stages of life advance. And when the jewel reaches a certain color, it means that it's time for you to die. And in the novel, the age is very young. It's 21. So you don't have long to live at all. And in the novel, there are ham-handed gestures as to why society is like this and what made it like this. And the main character is helped by a former colleague of his who reveals, one of the little reveals later on in the book, is his colleague reveals that he's actually in his 40s. And that to hide this fact, he's had cosmetic surgery. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of the book. The author's just making things up as he goes along. And the book ends. I won't spoil the exact ending of the book for you in case you're ever crazy enough to find a copy of Logan's Run, which is out of print and deserves to be, and read it. But the book ends in the classic manner of bad science fiction, whether it be a movie or a book, which is the surprise kicker at the end of the book is actually the start of another book. It just opens up questions and you're not going to get any answers. And that drives me crazy. In a book that wasn't ever meant to be part of a series, Logan's Run was not meant to be part of a series. The author had no idea. The writers of the book had no idea that it would be successful. They had no idea they would be writing sequels. And so it's a failure, a complete failure, because the big revelations at the end of the novel are not in any way foreshadowed in the novel and are not explained in any way in the novel. You're just left with the beginning of another book. And that's a bad experience. That's a bad feeling to end a book with. Just wretched. I remember it being wretched from the first few times that I read it. But I don't remember how bad it was, because science fiction has grown up a lot in the last 50 years. And straight from the experience of reading that wretched book, I watched Michael Anderson's 1976 movie, Logan's Run. And it improves the book in every conceivable way. Every mistake that the book makes, the movie improves, while keeping some of the essences. A society in which people reach a certain age and then die. Only in this case, there's a big setup around it, a big carousel, a big societal creation designed to take the sting out of it, designed, obviously, to make it palatable to the public so they don't revolt. And the conclusion of the movie, again, I won't spoil it for you in case you haven't seen it, but the conclusion of the movie isn't the beginning of another movie. Instead, the conclusion makes a kind of perfect sense and also has some visuals that are still amazing after all this time. And they don't involve any special effects, unless you call hundreds and hundreds of cats a special effect. The ending, the payoff of the movie, also the character beats in the course of the movie are so much better than anything in the book. It's just so much better. Logan's Run is a minor science fiction film classic, and you can see why when you're looking at it. It brims with creativity, and it holds its main point firmly in view instead of wandering all over creation with, with face doctoring allies and weird endings and whatnot. The ending prompted a great quip. Peter Ustinov, the actor Peter Ustinov, is in the movie along with Michael York. Peter Ustinov is in the movie. Again, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the ending involves Peter Ustinov, who was by this point, in his late 60s, I think. And when you watch the movie, you should remember that when Peter O'Toole was once asked, "Don't you find science fiction incomprehensible?" I knew obviously you were doing this for a paycheck, but did you make any sense at all out of the script? Peter Ustinov said, "Well, I didn't understand any of it except for the ending. The ending involving me made perfect sense." And when you see the end of the movie, you will understand. Of course, if you had your druthers, you would organize a whole society around Peter Ustinov. But anyway, that was my final reading rush prompt, was to do a book-movie combination. In this case, firmly reproving my old point, which is that the movie is almost always better. How could it not be? Except in very rare instances. If I ever do that regular feature, we will talk about rare exceptions. But most usually, it's the movie hands down. And in this case, it definitely was. So that wraps up the reading rush. I didn't want to just let it die without finishing it. So I'll wrap this up for now. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.